At just 12 years old, the profound truth that your very being was not your own had yet to fully dawn on you. The year is 1443 A.D., and you stand within the great hall of Bleo Castle, a silent observer as men, cloaked in opulent velvet and fur, openly deliberate your future. Their voices, hushed yet urgent, carve out your destiny as though you were a prize merit market. Your name is Margaret Beaufort, and though noble blood indeed courses through your veins, you are learning a harsh lesson. Lineage means little when you are born female in a world relentlessly governed by men, men who perceive daughters as mere coins to be strategically spent. The sweet scent of mint and rosemary rises from the rushes beneath your feet, freshly scattered this morning to combat the pervasive winter dampness that seeps through stone walls a full 3 feet thick. Candlelight flickers, casting dancing shadows across the faces of lords and bishops. They speak in low, conspiratorial tones of alliances and inheritances, their breath clouding visibly in the chill air. You pull your woolen cloak tighter around your slender shoulders, yet the profound cold you feel has nothing to do with the weather outside. Your guardian, William de la Pole, Duke of Suffolk, gestures in your direction, his ringed hand catching the firelight. "The girl brings substantial holdings," he announces, his voice resonant with the unquestioned authority of a man who has never doubted his right to orchestrate the fates of others. Her inheritance includes lands in Somerset, Devon, and Dorset. A marriage alliance now ensures those holdings for our cause. You long to demand what cause he speaks of, but a 12-year-old girl does not interrupt when powerful men are in discussion. Instead, your gaze settles on the face of John de la Pole, Suffolk's son, who will become your husband before the month concludes. He is perhaps 14, still awkwardly gangly, his hands appearing disproportionately large for his slender wrists. He glances at you, a quick, fleeting look, then turns away, as if your very sight causes him embarrassment. Before we delve deeper into these forgotten tales of suffering and survival, if you find value in uncovering the hidden truths of history, please consider hitting that like button and subscribing for more content. And I genuinely invite you to comment below, letting me know where in the world you're listening from. It's truly remarkable how we can connect across time and space, united by our shared curiosity about the past. Margaret Beaufort, born in 1443 A.D., entered a world where her very existence was an intricate paradox, both a blessing of immense potential and a crushing curse. As the only daughter and sole heiress of John Beaufort, Duke of Somerset, she carried within her bloodline a direct claim to the English throne, a legacy that would meticulously shape every single moment of her life. The Beaufort line traced its descent from John of Gaunt, Duke of Lancaster, and his mistress Catherine Swynford, a love affair later legitimized by marriage and royal decree, though the indelible stain of bastardy would forever follow their descendants like a persistent shadow. When Margaret was a mere 6 months old, her father passed away, leaving her, bewilderingly, one of the wealthiest heiresses in all of England. In the stark realities of the 15th century, such an inheritance was far from a gift. It was a profound burden. Wealthy orphans automatically became wards of the crown, their marriages meticulously prearranged to serve the precise political needs of whichever faction currently held power. Margaret's wardship was granted to William de la Pole, Duke of Suffolk, a man keenly aware that to control a child's marriage was to control her vast inheritance. The very great hall where 12-year-old Margaret now stands has been the silent witness to countless such chilling negotiations. Its walls, constructed of local gray limestone, have absorbed decades of whispered conspiracies and thundering demands. Tapestries, depicting grand, noble hunts, hang between the high windows, their once vibrant threads faded, but still depicting lords on horseback pursuing deer through painted forests. The irony, a sharp, bitter tang, is not lost on Margaret. Even at 12, she recognizes herself as prey, relentlessly pursued by powerful hunters. Suffolk's voice continues, meticulously outlining the terms of the marriage contract, as if Margaret were not standing a mere 3 feet away. The ceremony will take place here at Bledsoe within the fortnight. The girl's lands will be administered by my house until she reaches her majority. What remains unspoken, yet is perfectly understood by every man in the room, is that this arrangement guarantees Suffolk's family undisputed control over Margaret's immense wealth for many years to come. The rushes crackle softly under shifting feet as the assembled men nod in collective agreement. Margaret inhales the cloying scent of decaying herbs mixed with the earthier notes of wool and unwashed bodies. Even nobles in 1443 AD bathed infrequently, and the great hall now held the accumulated odor of a dozen men who had ridden hard through winter mud to attend this crucial negotiation. Margaret's soon-to-be husband, John de la Pole, shifts uncomfortably near the immense fireplace. The dancing flames cast flickering shadows across his face, briefly revealing the uncertainty he strives to conceal. At 14, he is as much a pawn in this ruthless game as Margaret, though his gender grants him the illusion of agency. He will inherit his father's titles and lands. She, however, will merely transfer hers to him upon marriage, as the rigid law dictates. The wedding ceremony unfolds on a frosty February morning, the ground covered like scattered pearls. Margaret is dressed in a gown of deep blue silk, the very color of royalty, yet the foreign fabric feels heavy and alien against her skin. The dress has been meticulously tailored to fit her slight frame, but the sheer weight of the silk and the elaborate headdress make her feel like a child playing dress-up in her mother's oversized clothes. The chapel at Bledsoe is small, cold, its stone walls seemingly absorbing both sound and light. Candles flicker within iron sconces, casting wavering shadows that give the painted saints on the walls a spectral, moving quality. Margaret kneels on the unforgiving stone floor, her knees already aching through the thin fabric of her dress, and utters the Latin words that will irrevocably bind her to a boy she barely knows. Ego Johannes, T. Margareta, in uxorem accipio, John recites, his voice cracking slightly on the unfamiliar syllables. I, John, take you, Margaret, as my wife. The words echo in the confined space, irrevocably tying her future to his with a finality that churns her stomach. Margaret responds with her own vows, her voice steadier than her trembling hands. Ego Margareta Johannum, in maritum accipio, I, Margaret, take you, John, as my husband. The words taste like ash in her mouth, but she speaks them clearly because she has been meticulously trained since birth to perform her duty, regardless of her personal feelings. The marriage is consummated that very same night, though both children are far too young to truly comprehend the act. Medieval law mandated consummation for a marriage to be valid, yet it also acknowledged that children could not provide meaningful consent. This profound contradiction, that a marriage could be both legally binding and profoundly harmful, would tragically define much of Margaret's early life. In the subsequent months, Margaret begins to grasp the harsh reality of her new situation. She lives within the de la Pole household, treated with the respect due to her noble rank, yet simultaneously subject to the controlling oversight reserved for valuable property. Every facet of her life is meticulously supervised and regulated. She cannot travel without explicit permission, cannot correspond with anyone outside the household, and holds no authority over decisions concerning her own vast lands or income. The chilling transformation from childhood innocence to political commodity becomes most starkly apparent during meals in the Great Hall. Margaret sits at the high table beside her young husband, adorned with the elaborate headdresses and rich fabrics that signify her status. Yet, she is forbidden to speak unless directly addressed. She observes the adults around her, discussing matters of state, military campaigns, and intricate political alliances, ever conscious that her own future hinges entirely on decisions made by others. The very food served reveals the strict hierarchy and pervasive control. Margaret is presented with choice cuts of meat and exotic spices, demonstrating her family's wealth, yet she cannot choose what or when to eat. Servants deliver predetermined portions at precise times. just as they manage every other aspect of her daily routine. Even her diet is not her own. During these formative months, Margaret begins to exhibit the formidable intelligence and unwavering determination that will later establish her as one of the most powerful women in English history. She listens intently to every conversation, meticulously filing away information about shifting political alliances, military strategies, and the intricate web of relationships that govern the nobility. She learns to decipher the subtle indicators of true power, which lords command genuine respect, which merely rely on fear, and which are simply decorative figures propped up by others. The year 1444 AD brings news that will irrevocably alter Margaret's trajectory. John de la Pole, her 14-year-old husband, dies suddenly of a fever. Official records offer no details of his illness, simply noting his death at his family's estate in Suffolk. Margaret, now a 13-year-old widow, finds herself in a position that is simultaneously liberating and terrifying. Under English law, Margaret's marriage to John de la Pole had never been fully consummated in the legal sense. Both were too young for the union to be considered complete. This technicality held monumental consequences. Margaret's inheritance remained her own, legally untransferred to her deceased husband's family. She was, once again, one of England's wealthiest heiresses and once again eminently available for marriage. News of John's death reaches Margaret in a manner that underscores the casual cruelty of her circumstances. She is seated in the solar, the private chamber where noble women spend their days, diligently working on embroidered altar cloth under the watchful eyes of her attendants. Her needle creates tiny, precise stitches in silk thread, a delicate work that signifies both her noble status and her training in the domestic arts. William de la Pole enters the solar without ceremony, his face grave, but his eyes shrewd and calculating. "Your husband is dead," he informs her, his voice devoid of warmth or comfort. Fever took him in the night. Margaret's needle freezes mid-stitch, but she does not raise her gaze from her work. She has learned that displaying emotion before powerful men is perilous. It reveals a weakness they can ruthlessly exploit. "I see," she responds quietly, resuming her embroidery with steady hands. The thread is a deep gold, the color of royal regalia, and each stitch represents hours of training in the meticulous skills deemed appropriate for noble women. Margaret has become expert at these small, precise tasks, just as she has learned to keep her thoughts and feelings carefully veiled. Suffolk observes her reaction with the keen attention of a merchant evaluating a valuable commodity. Margaret's composure clearly impresses him. She is displaying the very self-control that will make her invaluable in future negotiations. A girl who can receive news of her husband's death without weeping or fainting is a girl who can be relied upon to behave appropriately in any political situation. "You will remain in this household until other arrangements can be made," Suffolk continues, his tone making it abundantly clear that these arrangements would be made without any consultation of Margaret's preferences. "Your mourning period will be observed, naturally, but not extended unnecessarily." Margaret nods, fully comprehending the implications. Her mourning period would last precisely as long as it took Suffolk to negotiate her next marriage. She is 13 years old, already married and widowed, and now about to be traded again to serve the political needs of men who perceive her as a valuable asset rather than a human being. The months of Margaret's widowhood offer her a brief, tantalizing taste of relative freedom, though she remains firmly under Suffolk's control. She dedicates her days to intense study, working with tutors who instruct her in Latin, French, and the foundational principles of estate management. These lessons are not intended to prepare her for true independence. Women of her class are never truly independent, but rather to enhance her value as a wife to her next husband. Margaret proves to be an exceptional student, displaying a quick, incisive mind and an insatiable appetite for learning that genuinely surprises her tutors. She masters Latin with the fluency of a seasoned scholar, enabling her to read religious texts and complex legal documents in their original language. Her French becomes elegant and sophisticated, marking her as a woman capable of participating in the intricate international diplomacy that often shapes noble marriages. Most crucially, she begins to unravel the complex financial arrangements that govern her immense inheritance. The meticulously kept account books detailing Margaret's holdings reveal the true, astonishing scope of her wealth. She owns thousands of acres of highly productive farmland, generating rents that provide an enormous annual income. Her estates encompass not only agricultural land, but also invaluable resources like stone quarries, vast timber forests, and crucial river rights for mills and fisheries. The sheer total value of her inheritance positions her as one of the richest individuals in England, regardless of gender. This immense wealth, however, comes with a profound price, one that Margaret is slowly but painfully beginning to understand. Every acre of land she owns, every single pound of annual income her estates generate, makes her commensurately more valuable as a political alliance. Her inheritance, she realizes, cannot be separated from her body. To marry Margaret is to gain control of her lands. She cannot refuse marriage without risking the loss of everything she has inherited from her father. The stark reality of Margaret's situation crystallizes during a poignant conversation with her mother, Margaret Beauchamp, who visits Bletsoe Castle in the spring of 1445 AD. The two women sit nestled in the castle's herb garden, where early flowers, despite the lingering chill, are beginning to tentatively bloom. The garden provides a rare, precious opportunity for private conversation, far from the prying ears of servants and courtiers who diligently report every word to Suffolk. Margaret Beauchamp, a woman who has herself endured arranged marriages and navigated ruthless political maneuvering, gazes at her 14-year-old daughter with eyes that hold both deep love and weary resignation. "You must understand," she says, her voice low and urgent, "that your inheritance is both your greatest strength and your unbreakable chain." She continues, "The lands your father left you will provide you with immense wealth and influence, but they will also ensure that you are never truly free to choose your own path." Young Margaret listens intently, her hands folded primly in her lap, adopting the posture of attentive obedience that has been instilled in her since early childhood. But her mind races, actively processing the crushing implications of her mother's words. She's beginning to grasp that her wealth, paradoxically, grants her power in some respects, yet renders her utterly vulnerable in others. "What would happen if I refused to marry?" Margaret asks, though deep down, she already suspects the answer. Her mother's expression confirms her worst fears. "Your wardship would be sold to another lord," Margaret Beauchamp explains, "who would then possess the legal right to force your marriage or confiscate your lands as punishment for disobedience. A woman's inheritance exists only as long as she remains obedient to the men who control her. Refuse to marry, and you become a rebel against the natural order. Rebels lose everything." The conversation unfolds beside a bed of fragrant herbs, lavender, rosemary, and thyme, their scents forever intertwining with this moment of painful clarity for Margaret. The flowers surrounding them symbolize domesticity and feminine virtue, yet they also represent the narrow, restrictive boundaries within which noble women must conduct their lives. Beautiful, fragrant, and utterly contained. Summer brings ominous news of Margaret's next marriage. King Henry VI, swayed by his advisors and political allies, has now granted Margaret's wardship to Edmund Tudor, Earl of Richmond. This new arrangement serves multiple political objectives. It significantly strengthens the Tudor family's burgeoning position at court, provides Edmund with Margaret's substantial income, and crucially, forges a powerful alliance between the Lancastrian and Tudor factions, an alliance that will prove indispensable in the impending Wars of the Roses. Edmund Tudor, approximately 24 years old, is a decade Margaret senior. He is the son of Owen Tudor and Catherine of Valois, the formidable widow of King Henry V. This direct connection to the royal family renders Edmund an immensely valuable political ally, but also marks him as a man accustomed to having his desires met. He has been promised Margaret's hand in marriage, along with undisputed control of her inheritance, and he fully intends to claim both. The negotiations for Margaret's second marriage take place at the Grand Westminster Palace in the autumn of 1445 AD. Margaret is now 14, old enough to comprehend the profound political implications of her marriage, yet still too young to possess any legal right to refuse. She travels to Westminster with a small retinue, accompanied by guards and attendants whose primary function is to ensure her compliance rather than her comfort. Westminster Palace in 1445 AD is an expansive complex of buildings, serving simultaneously as a royal residence and a very seat of government. The Great Hall, where Margaret's marriage contract is debated, stands as one of the largest enclosed spaces in all of Europe. Its walls soar upward into deep shadows, and the floor is covered with rushes that rustle audibly with every movement. The echoing sound of footsteps within the vast space renders any private conversation impossible. Margaret stands beside a pillar, intricately carved with elaborate designs, silently observing the powerful men who will decide her future. Edmund Tudor is tall and powerfully built, exuding the self-assured confidence of a man who has never questioned his right to seize what he desires. He speaks to the king's advisors with an easy familiarity, openly discussing Margaret's inheritance as though she were not even present. "The girl's lands will provide substantial income for our household," Edmund states, his voice carrying clearly throughout the echoing hall. "With proper management, the estates should yield enough to support our position at court and fund our military obligations." He glances at Margaret briefly, evaluating her with the dispassionate eye one might use to assess a promising horse. She is young, healthy, and wealthy, precisely everything a nobleman could desire in a wife. King Henry VI, barely 24 himself, and already displaying nascent signs of the mental instability that will later plunge England into civil war, nods his endorsement of the marriage. The king's approval is paramount, transforming the marriage from a mere private arrangement into an unchallengeable royal command. Margaret, therefore, cannot refuse without committing an act of treason against the crown itself. The wedding ceremony for Margaret's second marriage occurs at Pembroke Castle in early 1446 AD, when Margaret is 14 years old. This ritual is far more elaborate than her first, befitting Edmund's higher status and the immense political importance of the alliance. Margaret wears cloth of gold, the most expensive fabric available, and a circlet of precious stones that unmistakably marks her rank as a future countess. The ceremony itself is a blend of solemn religious ritual and overt political theater. The Bishop of Winchester officiates, lending the full, unquestionable authority of the Church to the proceedings. Noble witnesses pack the chapel, their very presence ensuring that the marriage can never be questioned or annulled. Margaret utters her vows in a clear, steady voice, having learned that any display of reluctance or emotion merely invites speculation about her suitability as a wife. Edmund Tudor's vows are confident and profoundly possessive. As he places the ring on Margaret's finger, his hand completely covers hers, a potent physical reminder of the power dynamic that will utterly govern their marriage. The ring itself is heavy gold, set with a striking sapphire, beautiful, yet so large that it weighs down Margaret's small hand. She will wear it for the remainder of her life, a constant, tangible reminder of this exact moment when her independence was formally, irrevocably surrendered. The consummation of Margaret's second marriage takes place that very same night. This time, there is no question of the participants being too young. Margaret is 14, considered fully adult by medieval standards, and Edmund is an experienced man who understands precisely what he is claiming. The encounter is brief, clinical, and entirely focused on establishing Edmund's legal and physical dominance over his new wife. Margaret's adjustment to married life with Edmund Tudor starkly reveals the harsh realities of 15th century marriage, even for women of immense wealth. She is now the Countess of Richmond, a title that grants her social prominence, but confers no actual power. Every decision concerning her life, her property, and her future is made solely by Edmund, who exercises his legal authority with the casual, unquestioning confidence of a man who has never doubted his right to control others. The household they establish at Caldecott Castle in Wales overtly reflects Edmund's political ambitions and military background. The castle is a fortress built for defense rather than comfort or beauty. Margaret's daily routine is meticulously structured around Edmund's needs and preferences, her own desires considered only when they do not conflict with his overriding priorities. Edmund's approach to managing Margaret's inheritance reveals both his acute political acumen and his fundamental disregard for her as an individual. He immediately begins reorganizing her vast estates, installing his own men as stewards and bailiffs. The considerable income generated from Margaret's lands is swiftly diverted to fund Edmund's military campaigns and political activities, with absolutely no consideration for her preferences or concerns. Margaret observes these profound changes with a growing, painful understanding of her situation. She is wealthy in name, but utterly powerless in practice. Her inheritance provides the crucial resources for Edmund's ambitions, yet she has no say whatsoever in how those resources are utilized. She is learning that being a noble woman, however high her status, fundamentally means being valuable property rather than a person with agency. The political situation in England during 1446 and 1447 AD is increasingly volatile, with tensions rapidly escalating between different factions of the nobility. Edmund Tudor's position as a staunch supporter of the Lancastrian cause places him, and by extension Margaret, in profound danger as opposition to King Henry VI's increasingly weak rule intensifies. Margaret finds herself inextricably caught in political conflicts she neither chose nor can escape. In late 1456 AD, Margaret, then 13 years old and married to the significantly older Edmund, makes a discovery that fills her with both joy and terror. She is pregnant. Joy, because producing an heir is her foremost duty as a wife. Terror, because she fully comprehends the grave physical dangers of childbirth for someone her age. Medieval medical knowledge regarding pregnancy and birth is severely limited and often dangerously ineffective, rendering every pregnancy a potential death sentence. Margaret's pregnancy progresses through the winter of 1456 and into 1457 AD, a period when political tensions across England are reaching their explosive breaking point. Edmund is frequently absent from home, engrossed in military campaigns that prevent him from offering any support during Margaret's difficult pregnancy. She confronts the immense physical and emotional challenges of impending motherhood essentially alone, attended only by servants and midwives. The political situation deteriorates further when Edmund Tudor is captured by opposing Yorkist forces in August 1456 AD. He is imprisoned at Carmarthen Castle, where he succumbs to fever in November 1456 AD. Margaret, now approximately 7 months pregnant, receives the devastating news of her husband's death, while simultaneously grappling with the immense physical and emotional strain of her advanced pregnancy. Edmund's death leaves Margaret in an exquisitely precarious position. She is a pregnant widow with vast wealth, yet utterly without a male protector, rendering her both immensely valuable and terrifyingly vulnerable. The child she carries could be a son, who would inherit Edmund's titles and her lands, or a daughter, destined to face the same fate Margaret herself has endured. Either way, the baby will be born into a world where political violence and arranged marriages are grimly routine. Margaret goes into labor at Pembroke Castle in Wales on January 28, 1457 AD, at the tender age of 13. The birth is arduous and perilous, as is tragically typical for someone so young. Medieval childbirth is attended by midwives whose knowledge is based on generations of experience rather than formal medical training, and the mortality rates for both mothers and babies are horrifyingly high. The labor extends for agonizing hours, with Margaret enduring pain number 13-year-old should ever experience. The midwives do their utmost to assist, but their methods are limited to herbal remedies and fervent prayers. Margaret's small frame makes the birth especially difficult, and there are moments when both she and the baby are in mortal danger. The child who finally emerges from this ordeal is a son, healthy and remarkably strong despite the harrowing circumstances of his birth. Margaret names him Henry, after the king, a deliberate political choice signaling her continued, unwavering loyalty to the Lancastrian cause. The boy would grow to become Henry VII, the first Tudor king of England. But in January 1457 AD, he is simply a vulnerable newborn whose very survival hinges on his 13-year-old mother's ability to shrewdly navigate the treacherous world of medieval politics. Margaret's recovery from childbirth is slow and arduous. Medieval medical care for new mothers is minimal, and the profound physical trauma of giving birth at such a young age leaves her weak and vulnerable. She would never bear another child, though whether this was due to medical complications from Henry's birth or other factors remains unclear. What is certain is that the experience of pregnancy and childbirth at 13 profoundly and permanently shaped her health and her entire outlook on life. The early months of Henry's life are marked by intense uncertainty and pervasive danger. Margaret is a widow with an infant son, surrounded by political enemies who would eagerly eliminate both of them to claim her immense inheritance. She must find a way, swiftly, to protect herself and her child while navigating the complex, ever-shifting web of alliances and enmities that define noble society. Margaret's ingenious solution to her vulnerable position is to seek another marriage. This time, however, to a man who can offer genuine protection for both her and her son. Her shrewd choice falls upon Sir Henry Stafford, the younger son of the powerful Duke of Buckingham. This marriage, her third, is distinctly different from her previous unions because Margaret herself plays a far more active, decisive role in the negotiations. Henry Stafford, approximately 30 years old, is significantly older than Margaret, but not so old as to be her grandfather. He is an experienced soldier and courtier, possessing a deep understanding of the political realities of the time. Crucially, he is willing to protect Margaret's son and genuinely respect her role as Henry's mother, a concession that was by no means guaranteed in 15th-century marriages. The marriage to Henry Stafford takes place in 1458 AD, when Margaret is 15 years old. This ceremony is notably smaller and more private than her previous weddings, reflecting both the tumultuous political situation and Margaret's changed circumstances. She is no longer a valuable virgin being traded for political advantage, but a widow with a child, actively seeking protection and stability. Margaret's relationship with Henry Stafford proves to be the most stable and genuinely supportive of all her marriages. Stafford treats her with profound respect and affection, fostering an environment that allows her to cultivate her intellectual abilities and begin participating in significant political activities. Under his protective wing, Margaret begins to emerge as a political figure in her own right, rather than simply as a valuable piece of property. The years of Margaret's marriage to Henry Stafford, from 1458 to 1471 AD, represent a period of remarkable relative stability in her tumultuous personal life. Even as England descends into the chaos of the Wars of the Roses, Margaret shrewdly utilizes this stability to hone her political skills and begin meticulously building the intricate network of alliances that will eventually help her son claim the throne. During this pivotal period, Margaret becomes deeply, actively involved in the Lancastrian cause, leveraging her immense wealth and burgeoning influence to support the faction she believes offers the best possible chance for her son's future. She cultivates relationships with other powerful noble families, provides crucial financial support for military campaigns, and begins to truly understand how power authentically operates in medieval England. Margaret's political education during these years is both comprehensive and intensely practical. She learns to decipher the subtle signals indicating shifting alliances, to grasp the underlying economic factors that drive political decisions, and to recognize the personal motivations that profoundly influence public actions. Most importantly, she learns to wield her wealth and formidable social position to actively influence events rather than merely react to them. The death of Henry Stafford in 1471 AD marks the conclusion of Margaret's most stable marriage and the true beginning of her emergence as one of the most formidable women in England. She is now 28 years old, seasoned in the intricate ways of politics and court life, and utterly determined to secure her son's future, regardless of the daunting obstacles in her path. Margaret's fourth and final marriage is to Thomas Stanley, Earl of Derby, a man whose political flexibility and innate survival instincts precisely mirror her own. Stanley is a powerful nobleman who has skillfully maintained his position through multiple changes of regime, making him an ideal partner for Margaret's soaring political ambitions. Their marriage, which takes place in 1472 AD, is not a union of youthful romance, but a calculated partnership founded on mutual respect and shared political goals. Under Stanley's strategic protection, Margaret begins to operate more openly as a prominent political figure. She maintains extensive correspondence with other noble families, provides crucial financial support for causes she champions, and begins to meticulously position herself as a potential kingmaker. Her son, Henry, is still in exile, but Margaret is tirelessly laying the essential groundwork for his eventual, triumphant return to England. The 1470s and 1480s constitute a period of intense political activity for Margaret. She navigates the complex and perilous world of Yorkist rule under Edward IV and later Richard III, relentlessly working to advance her son's interests while artfully avoiding the tragic fate of other nobles who miscalculated their political positions. Her survival and remarkable success during this period are a testament to the extraordinary political skills she has cultivated since her childhood as a seemingly powerless pawn. Margaret's relationship with Richard III is particularly intricate and fraught with danger. When Richard seizes the throne in 1483 AD, Margaret faces a monumental decision, whether to accept the new regime or risk everything to passionately support her son's claim. Her momentous decision to support Henry's invasion of England in 1485 AD represents the culmination of decades of meticulous political planning and profound personal sacrifice. The Battle of Bosworth Field in August 1485 AD marks the pivotal moment when Margaret's long, arduous campaign to secure her son's future finally achieves its glorious success. Henry Tudor's decisive victory over Richard III elevates him to King Henry VII and irrevocably transforms Margaret from a political schemer into the revered mother of the ruling monarch. She is now 52 years old and has attained a level of power and influence that would have been utterly unimaginable when she was first married off at the tender age of 12. Margaret's position as the king's mother grants her unprecedented authority for a woman of her era. She is bestowed with the esteemed title My Lady the King's Mother and wields significant influence over court appointments, critical policy decisions, and crucial royal marriages. She has, through sheer will and intelligence, transformed her inherited wealth and her painfully acquired experiences into genuine, formidable political power. The profound irony of Margaret's monumental success is that it comes at the steep cost of her own personal happiness and fulfillment. She has dedicated her entire adult life to fighting for her son's future, sacrificing her own desires and opportunities to secure his rightful position. Her victory is complete, yet it carries a haunting hollowness. She has gained ultimate power, but perhaps lost the very possibility of personal contentment. Margaret's later years are marked by both profound triumph and deep tragedy. She witnesses her son establish the formidable Tudor dynasty and secure the throne for his descendants. But she also endures the pain of outliving many of her contemporaries and watching the political world she painstakingly helped create evolve beyond her direct control. She passes away in 1509 AD, shortly after her son, having lived to see her grandson Henry VIII begin his illustrious reign. The legacy of Margaret Beaufort extends far beyond her immediate family. She is rightfully remembered as one of the most powerful women in English history, a figure who remarkably transformed personal trauma into formidable political authority. Her story vividly illustrates both the severe constraints placed upon women in medieval society and the extraordinary ways in which exceptional individuals could transcend those limitations through sheer intelligence, unwavering determination, and brilliant strategic thinking. Margaret's influence on English history is both profound and enduring. Through her son, Henry VII, she is the direct ancestor of all subsequent Tudor monarchs, including the notorious Henry VIII and the iconic Elizabeth I. Her political acumen and strategic foresight were instrumental in establishing one of the most successful dynasties in English history. Her life story unequivocally demonstrates that even in societies that severely restricted women's opportunities, individual determination and keen intelligence could overcome seemingly insurmountable obstacles. The transformation of Margaret Beaufort from a powerless child bride into one of the most influential women in English history stands as a testament to human resilience and unparalleled political skill. She learned to master the very system that had oppressed her, skillfully turning it into a tool for achieving her grand objectives, converting her inherited wealth and noble status into genuine political power. Her story is simultaneously inspiring and tragic, illustrating both the remarkable possibilities and the inherent costs of ambition in a world that offered women so few avenues for self-determination. Margaret's deepened religious devotion in her later years adds another intricate dimension to her character. She becomes deeply involved in religious activities, founding schools, and generously supporting religious institutions. This intense spiritual focus may represent both genuine faith and a form of penance for the profound political compromises she was forced to make throughout her life. Her religious activities also serve subtle political purposes, significantly enhancing her reputation and providing yet another avenue for exercising influence. The sheer complexity of Margaret's character is perhaps best illuminated by her nuanced relationship with her son, Henry VII. She loved him deeply and had sacrificed absolutely everything for his ultimate success, but she also saw him as the complete fulfillment of her soaring political ambitions. Their relationship was both genuinely affectionate and meticulously strategic, reflecting the intricate ways in which personal and political motivations profoundly intertwine in the lives of medieval nobles. Margaret's story also brightly illuminates the broader social and political context of 15th century England. Her experiences mirror the pervasive instability and brutal violence of the Wars of the Roses, the critical role of marriage in forging political alliances, and the ingenious ways in which women could exert influence despite severe legal and social restrictions. Her life provides an invaluable window into a world where political survival demanded constant vigilance and astute strategic thinking. The documentation of Margaret's life is remarkably extensive, providing historians with detailed information about her experiences and motivations. Her correspondence, meticulously kept financial records, and the detailed accounts of her contemporaries collectively create a vivid, compelling picture of a woman who was both shaped by her demanding circumstances and fiercely determined to shape them in return. The historical record reveals both her extraordinary political acumen and her deeply personal struggles. Margaret's enduring influence on education and religious institutions in her later years demonstrates another vital aspect of her character. She skillfully utilized her wealth and influence to champion learning and religious devotion, perhaps seeking to forge a lasting positive legacy beyond her political achievements. Her educational foundations reflect both her own intellectual interests and her profound understanding of the crucial importance of education for maintaining social and political influence. The profound relationship between Margaret's personal experiences and her political activities reveals the powerful ways in which individual trauma can be transformed into significant social influence. Her childhood marriages and early widowhood provided her with a brutal, invaluable education in the realities of power and the paramount importance of strategic thinking. These painful experiences became the unshakable foundation for her later, extraordinary political success. Margaret's story also raises fundamental questions about the nature of power and agency within medieval society. While she achieved remarkable influence and success, she did so entirely within a system that fundamentally restricted women's opportunities. Her triumph is both a victory over oppression and a cunning accommodation to it, vividly illustrating the complex negotiations required for mere survival and ultimate success in profoundly hierarchical societies. The psychological dimensions of Margaret's character are particularly compelling. She displayed remarkable resilience and unwavering determination, but also a stark willingness to sacrifice personal happiness for grand political goals. Her emotional life remains largely veiled in the historical record, but her actions strongly suggest both a deep, abiding love for her son and a fierce, unyielding determination to secure his future. Margaret's relationships with other women of her time provide another valuable perspective on her character. She operated in a world overwhelmingly dominated by men, but she also forged vital relationships with other noble women who shared her experiences and challenges. These relationships offered both personal support and crucial political opportunities, demonstrating the ingenious ways in which women could create networks of mutual assistance despite severe social restrictions. The economic dimensions of Margaret's story are also critically significant. Her inherited wealth provided the indisputable foundation for her political influence, but she also proved herself to be a remarkably skilled manager of financial resources. Her ability to use her wealth strategically demonstrates both her sharp intelligence and her profound understanding of the intricate relationship between economic power and political influence. Margaret's story continues to powerfully resonate in contemporary discussions about women's roles in politics and society. Her experiences vividly illustrate both the daunting obstacles faced by women in male-dominated systems and the extraordinary ways in which exceptional individuals can overcome those obstacles through intelligence, sheer determination, and brilliant strategic thinking. Her legacy provides profound inspiration for women facing similar challenges in vastly different historical contexts. The detailed documentation of Margaret's religious activities in her later years reveals yet another fascinating dimension of her character. She became increasingly involved in religious institutions and charitable activities, perhaps seeking both spiritual fulfillment and a lasting positive legacy. Her deep religious devotion may also represent a form of penance for the significant political compromises she was forced to make throughout her life. Margaret's profound influence on the development of the English monarchy extends far beyond her immediate family. Her political skills and strategic thinking helped establish crucial precedents for royal authority and court organization that profoundly influenced English government for generations to come. Her story demonstrates the powerful ways in which individual actions can have far-reaching, transformative historical consequences. The enduring tragedy of Margaret's story lies in the immense personal costs of her political success. She achieved remarkable power and influence, but only by sacrificing her own happiness and personal fulfillment. Her life poignantly illustrates the painful choices faced by women in societies that offer severely limited opportunities for self-determination and personal satisfaction. Margaret's final years are marked by both glorious triumph and profound isolation. She had achieved her life's ultimate goal of securing her son's throne, but she had also outlived most of her contemporaries and found herself increasingly isolated from the very political world she had helped meticulously create. Her death in 1509 AD marks the end of an era and the dawn of a new, transformative phase in English history. The enduring legacy of Margaret Beaufort serves as a powerful reminder of the complex, often paradoxical relationship between individual agency and societal constraint. Her story brilliantly demonstrates that even in societies that severely limit women's opportunities, exceptional individuals can discover ingenious ways to exercise influence and achieve their most ambitious goals. Her life provides both profound inspiration and a sobering cautionary tale, illustrating both the remarkable possibilities and the crushing costs of ambition within restrictive social systems. You stand now within the hushed shadows of Westminster Abbey, where Margaret Beaufort lies interred beneath a monument that stands as a silent witness to her extraordinary life. The bronze effigy portrays her in the dignified robes of a noble woman, her hands reverently folded in prayer, her face serene in death. Yet, the cold stone cannot possibly capture the fierce fire that burned within her, the unyielding determination that transformed a powerless child into one of the most influential women in English history. The girl who was married at 12 and pregnant at 13 blossomed into the mother of kings, the founder of a dynasty, and the architect of her own truly remarkable destiny. She learned to play the ruthless game of power with masters who believed they owned her, and she played it with such unparalleled skill that she ultimately, profoundly, owned them. In a world where women were expected to remain silent and submissive, Margaret Beaufort found her voice, and she used it to irrevocably change the course of history itself. Her story echoes powerfully through the centuries, a vivid reminder that even the most seemingly powerless can discover ways to seize control of their own fate. She was broken as a child, but she meticulously rebuilt herself as a woman of steel, transforming her deep pain into an unyielding purpose and her profound trauma into an ultimate triumph. The 12-year-old girl who once stood in silence while men decided her future ultimately became the formidable woman who decided the very future of England.